What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the first episode of the MMA Pro Show. Thank you for joining me. We got a very exciting first show to set things off. I'm Stan the Man, and I'll be taking you on this journey through the MMA world. This episode of the MMA Pro Show is brought to you by Baroni Recycling. They specialize in all forms of recycling scrap metal. If you're in the New York area, check them out or contact them at baronirecycling.com. Again, baronirecycling.com. This episode is also brought to you by The Real Radio Show. You guys can check them out at therealradioshow.com. Celebrity interviews, rock music, indie bands. Check them out. Google anywhere, realradioshow.com, Real Radio Show. Check them out. They're on iTunes, Nobex Radio, 365 Live Radio. They're all over the place. Again, The Real Radio Show. And here we are, the first episode of the MMA Pro Show. We got an amazing show lined up for you guys today. We got some great interviews with some big names in the sport. We're going to have Chris Wade from Long Island MMA. He's a UFC fighter. He's fighting on the Boston UFC card on the 18th of January. We're going to have him on. We're going to have Jessica Evil Eye, who is a top 5 bantamweight. She's probably going to be staring across from Ronda Rousey pretty soon. And Tom Kong Watson, who, if you guys don't know him, he's one of the most exciting MMA fighters in the sport today. He really goes after it every time he gets out there. He's big in the UK, trained all over the country, trained all over the world. So we'll have him on. Jessica Eye, Chris Wade, Tom Kong Watson. We got a great show for you guys, and this is what we're going to be bringing every week. A lot of great behind-the-scenes, in-depth interviews with some top names, and we hope you guys enjoy it. So we'll get to our first interview in a little bit. Before we do that, we will talk a little bit about last night, UFC 182. Big event for the UFC, big event for fighting in general, a very, very highly anticipated fight between Daniel Cormier and Jon Jones. A lot of build-up. And they delivered. It was a night of decisions, but it was an action-packed fight. It had a lot of suspense, and Jon Jones definitely prevailed in the championship rounds. It looked like Daniel Cormier's cardio failed him a little bit. Not so much his skills. He pretty much hit a wall with the cardio, it seemed. That enabled Jon Jones to take him down a few times and really start picking him apart and using his range as Cormier lost his speed and wasn't able to get out of the way of the shots, get his hands up in time. But great night of fights. They won fight of the night. Donald Cerrone beat Miles Jury. He was not happy. He debuted a new style of kicking called the fuck you kick, where he really loaded up while the guy's on the ground. And I mean, Miles Jury's undefeated. You know, he does have a loss to Ally Aquinta, but on the Ultimate Fighter, he's undefeated in the cage, so it's a big win for Cowboy Cerrone. I'm sure he wanted to stop Miles Jury. Probably, you look at it like Miles Jury is a contender, but I mean, I think Anthony Pettis might have stopped Miles Jury. Type of thought process goes into what happens next for Donald Cerrone. So he's probably still a fight or two away from a title shot with that performance, but I mean, Miles Jury's no slouch, so beating him or beating a guy who's 15-0 doesn't hurt your ranking or your career status that much. But a guy like Donald Cerrone wanted to get the finish of Miles Jury, and he didn't get the finish, and he voiced his opinion. Very upset not getting the finish after the fight, but I'm sure we'll see him in a couple weeks or a couple months back in action, and that fight will be forgotten about, and he'll be back on his way toward a rematch, possibly with Anthony Pettis for the title. We also saw Hector Lombard lay an egg against Josh Burkman. He definitely did not look like a world beater. Dana White gave praise to Josh Berkman before he gave praise to Hector Lombard, so he's definitely a few fights away from a title shot. And Paul Felder was probably the star of the evening, knocking out Danny Castillo with a spinning back fist. We never seen Castillo knocked out, so at least knocked out or stopped like that. So Paul Felder definitely puts himself on the map, and we'll probably be seeing a lot more from him in the future. And we're going to wrap up UFC 182 discussion, and we're going to get into UFC 183 with our next guest, who will be on the card January 31st. It will be Tom Watson joining us in a moment, and stay tuned, the MMA Pro Show. The following interview is brought to you guys by Stanley Builders Home Improvements. They're the residential and commercial construction company with over 40 years of experience. If you guys are in the New York area and you need any commercial or residential work done, contact them at 516-458-1393, or you could find them on Facebook. Again, Stanley Builders Home Improvements for all your residential and commercial construction needs. And we're here now on the MMA Pro Show. We're going to have Tom Kong Watson join us in a minute. And I think we have him on the line now. Tom Watson, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. How are you guys?
Good. How are you? How's training going for this upcoming fight?
Yeah, pretty good. I mean, final stages now, really, 3 weeks after training. Really just finishing up and making sure that I peak at the right time, I think.
What do? You take off a week or two before the fights? How's weight cutting for you? You cut a lot of weight?
I mean, I don't cut too much weight, really, as far as some of the guys, I'm about 22 pounds, but really most of it's water weight. It's not too difficult. And I pretty much stay at the same weight all years. So.
I know that's a lot for a lot of guys. That's the hardest part, is making the weight. The fight's the easy part.
Yeah, I find a lot of guys, after fights, they put on an extra 20 pounds, 25 pounds. And, for me, it's not really something that is an option when you're trying to, you need to stay active all the time. You don't know when you're going to get a fight. And
yeah, I think that's
I think you can.
The wrong approach.
I think you can have a lot of your camp spending the time trying to lose weight rather than, really my training doesn't change at all for trying to lose weight. It's just about training to get better to compete.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. I think that's the wrong approach. The guys that balloon up and the whole camp turns into making weight as opposed to training to get better or just training to get in shape.
Yeah.
But what do you see coming into this fight? What are you looking for Rafael Natal to do? Like, what do you see his strengths?
He's had a lot of fights in the UFC, so it's good in that aspect, because sometimes you fight guys that they haven't fought in the UFC and they've had you can see fights, but there's not really that many fights at a high level to watch. So, the good thing with Natal is I can see him against a lot of top opponents, and, he's got a pretty decent record. So, but, I think he generally does the same thing. I think he tries to stay away a lot in the striking range, and then he's either in or out, and he moves a lot. He has very good movement. He moves around a lot, and I think he openly says, my passion is jiu-jitsu, and he wants to submit people. I'm not saying he won't stand, but I think he prefers a submission, and I think he's very well rounded, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, he's a jiu-jitsu brawler to me. He's a jiu-jitsu black belt. He brawls. He sets up his takedowns. I think whoever made this matchup did a great job with the matchmaking. I think you guys are fireworks. You bring it. You throw down. You got good grappling, great striking. I mean, if anything, I would think he was going to try to exploit you in the grappling realm. So is that what you're working on for this fight?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's no secret, really. Most of my fights, not only in the UFC, but they've generally been like that, because people might have success standing up, but the way I fight and the pressure and coming forward, I think a lot of people just think, the easier way is just to grapple, because they don't like that kind of pressure. So I wouldn't be surprised, but as you said, he swings pretty heavy, and I've seen in some of his fights, he'll throw pretty heavy on the feet. So I'm not expecting him just to try and take it to the ground.
Yeah, I'm expecting this one. I could see him trying to take it to the ground, but I do see him maybe swinging with you to set it up. So he's gonna give you the opportunity, and I think you definitely are going into this fight with the better striking. So you have that on your side, and the question is going to be, can he get you to the ground, or can he land a shot? I think this is your fight to win. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, most fights really, in the UFC, everybody's at such a good level in most ranges that really it's just about who gets off their game plan on the night. And, as you touched on, I think this will be no different. It's now everybody is comfortable in every areas, but, every fighter has their own thing they want to do and their own thing they like to do in training and fights, and I don't see this fight being any different.
Where are you training at for this one? Look, when I look you up, you've been all over the place. I think I've seen you in Florida training. You have a Florida phone number. I've seen you at Jackson's. I've heard of you at Jackson's. I've heard of you at AOJ. Where are you training at for this fight?
Well, I'm in California. I've been in California for a couple of years now, but yeah, I trained at Jackson's for a long time. A lot of good friends, good coaches there, and from Jackson's I ended up training at TriStar a bunch in Montreal. And you mentioned Florida. That was really just with Rashad moving out there and going to train again a little bit with him. And I've been in California for a while now, training mainly at Rain Training Center, and now there's a big bunch of guys to work with out here. So
that's your story. And you wound up in Florida for a little bit training with Rashad when he first set up the Black Zillions?
Yeah, pretty much. I just had a back surgery actually, and speaking to Rashad, and he said, "Listen, you want to come out? Florida's a great place. You can train a little bit. We can hang out." And at that time, he was fighting Phil Davis, so went out, did a little training with him, and I liked that setup. But at that time, I was still training at Jackson's a lot, so it was kind of something I liked. But it's difficult to train at too many places with. MMA is really not that big a circle, so.
Yeah, I'm sure you're training with guys you may fight. You're training with, everybody knows each other pretty much, so.
Yeah, pretty much. I think I've trained with a lot of guys. When I fought Laters in Brazil, I trained in Brazil like 7 years earlier, so, I trained with him for probably 4 or 5 weeks a long time ago, so it is what it is,
Oh, you trained with Thales Laters, you're saying?
Yeah, about 7 years ago before I ever fought MMA, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I always talk to people. That's probably one of the roughest aspects of it is the bond you build and just the camaraderie you build a little bit by training with people, and then you have to sign the dotted line to hurt them and fight them in the cage. It's pretty crazy, but have you had a chance, or has it almost happened where you almost had to fight a friend, or?
Not really, but those things really don't bother me that much, It's
you're a fighter.
For me, it's if the other person is bothered by it, then I've really got no interest to do it. But if the other person doesn't really care too much, then you train all the time in the gym.
You might as well get paid.
What's the difference? It's not. You're going to get paid, and it's it is a team sport. You need a team to train. There's no doubt about that. But it's life is individual. Really, everybody's out for themselves. As bad as that sounds, that's the reality. So
yeah, that's the harsh reality of it. Yes, completely. That's the reality of people. It's very rare to meet. It's very rare to meet people that are giving and compassionate. You got most people that, like you said, are out for themselves. But you meet them every now and then. There's a lot of them in the MMA community. I've heard Tom Watson is one of them.
Well, I think it's without getting too philosophical, it is. Like you said, that is life, but I don't really have a problem with it, so it's not a big issue for me to fight someone. And
what's your approach to fighting? Like what?
It's just something I enjoy doing, and I think it's something I didn't grow up doing. I didn't really grow up doing martial arts, but I grew up playing a lot of other sports, and I just think I became very competitive, and then once I got into boxing, my competitiveness went into that. So I just think fighting is just competition to me. It's just something I chose to do, and that's my competition. And let me see if I can beat this guy. Let me see how far I can go with this, and just gives you a goal and something to work towards. And just really, I think otherwise there's not really much meaning to what you're doing if you wake up and you don't really have much of a plan what you're going to do with your life.
Yeah, I definitely like your approach to fighting, like the style that you come in the cage with every time. I mean, if people aren't watching your fights, they're missing out, because you're a guy who brings it. There's no lay and pray. There's no stall and brawl, whatever the term you would use. You definitely come to fight every night. And
well, I think the problem with MMA now is, with making it a sport and acceptable, they have to put it into rounds and a time limit, which you know, a lot of guys now, which is very smart on their aspect, is, you know, it makes more sense to win a fight than to try and have a good fight and you end up losing, you know. So a lot of guys now are tactically very astute because it pays and it makes more sense. But, you know, to me, fighting is not really, you can't really judge like that. You know, if you go out there and lose a decision in the UFC, I don't really see that that's really that great a loss, because in the real world, if that was an actual fight, who's won? You know, it's somebody's decision. So unless there's an actual finish, I don't really see.
Yeah, I don't agree.
There's a clear winner there, but at time limits, you know, don't allow that anymore.
I don't agree with the scoring criteria at all. I think they need to. I mean, but what system can they come up with? I don't know, but they definitely need to come up with something, because there are a lot of fights where, like you said, more damage is done, and even the who would you rather be question, you know, who would you rather be after the fight, and if the one guy's eye is leaking but he got 6 takedowns, he wins the fight, you know. So yeah, they definitely need to do something with the scoring criteria. You're actually a prime example of that, you know. Like you could look at some of your fights and you could look at ground strikes landed against you, and it's like guys are maybe taking you down and they're not doing much with it, you know what I mean? Guys are point fighting, stalling, and just playing the clock out a little bit, and it takes away.
Yeah, I mean, I understand it, because, look, you know, when I came to the UFC, I really, it sounds kind of stupid, but I really didn't have, obviously everybody goes out there to win, but most of my emphasis was to just go out there and try to have a really good fight, you know, because I built up a pretty good name in England through just having, you know, tough fights, back and forth fights, and that's just what I wanted to do. And, you know, I feel I did that in the first fight against Brad Tavares, and really I learned pretty fast that doesn't really fly very well in the UFC. Like, yeah, all right, you had a good fight, but you don't make too much money because you don't get the win.
Yeah, you get guys.
And so it doesn't pay. You know, it's like you got to eventually decide: would I have been better fighting a technical match? You know, almost not running away, but you know, it's just difficult to. Play
there's
the
a lot of
in
emphasis.
The current 15-minute system.
Yeah, the judges, there's so much emphasis on cage control and just control and pushing someone up against the fence. And, I mean, you're not doing too much damage there. You're just stalling the fight, essentially. So, yeah, they definitely...
Yeah, because, I mean, what is a fight? A fight really is trying... If you see a fight, I don't like the scenario on the street, but if you see something out on the street, the only guy someone wins is, look, when somebody gets knocked out or they go to sleep, it's not like, okay, this guy might be bleeding, this guy might have got taken down, but the fight is still going.
Yeah.
You know, so unless there's an actual finish, you know, I saw Cowboy Morris Jory fight yesterday, and, you know, Cowboy's already come out and said, listen, yesterday feels a shame because he was trying to fight the whole time, and again, I say it's like trying to be smart from Jory's aspect, but, you know, in an actual fight, there's really only one winner there.
Yeah. That's what I actually covered that in my opening monologue on the show. I said, yeah, Cerrone was very unhappy with that, but I mean, Miles Jury's undefeated, he's 15-0, and the guy knows what he's doing, you know. He knows how to not get knocked out. He knows how to not get submitted, so that's what he did. You know, he survived in that fight. And you do see that a lot. You see guys just go in survival mode and not try to finish the fight, but that's definitely not Tom Watson style. I can guarantee the fans that. So, what you don't come from a kickboxing background? You come from a boxing background?
Yeah, well, I started boxing in England. I had a lot of amateur fights, and then from that, I just took an MMA fight. Really, you know, I hadn't ever trained any wrestling, done some grappling, but you know, the level of grappling back then in England wasn't the greatest. And then through doing MMA, you know, I realised that, hey, you know, boxing is okay, but kickboxing, I think, opens up more, is more effective in a fight. So then I started to take kickboxing fights, Thai boxing, you know, full Thai boxing rules, and just tried to do a lot of competitions. You know, there wasn't really a great wrestling scene, but there was, you know, quite a few grappling competitions you could do, and really that's why I ended up coming to the States and to Canada, because the level of training and competition was just so much higher than England was back then.
What's Canada? You were at TriStar for a little while?
Yeah, I just went out there. Initially went there for a couple of weeks. Actually went with Cowboy to train with St. Pierre for one of his fights, and then I liked the the coaches up there for us, Eric O'Keefe, a bunch of those really good coaches, and thought, you know what, Canada was easy for me to move there because the visa situation is easier from Canada being part of the Commonwealth and England. So, I went to Canada for 6 months and just rented an apartment and just trained at TriStar. So.
Oh, so yeah, you've been all over the place. You've been to pretty much every, top gym spread out all over the country, it seems like.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, not every place, but, just for me, I just wanted to go and see maybe what these guys are doing, something that I haven't seen. What are they doing there? What is just more in sort of inquisitive nature, as in, what's going on here? I want to try and learn something here. And, luckily all of these gyms have allowed me to go there.
What's it like at AOJ? I've seen some videos online. You getting a chance to roll with Rafa Mendes, the jiu-jitsu. You can call him the jiu-jitsu god right now, the jiu-jitsu world champ right now. So what's it like rolling with him?
I mean, when I first went there, a lot of people actually, I'm not going to say they told me not to go there, but, generally that's a lot of smaller guys at that gym. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's, a lot of people said, oh, you'd be better training at these places, have bigger guys. But, when I first went in there, just the technique and how they're looking at jiu-jitsu was just something to me that I thought, wow, these guys are really just on another level in terms of how they're teaching. Particularly jiu-jitsu. I mean, maybe, the thing is they don't really have a regard for MMA, which I like. It's a lot of places now want to teach you, but, their passion is jiu-jitsu. This is what we do. This is what we're going to teach. And, my aspect looks at it as in say, I'll work out what works in MMA and what doesn't. But, in terms of jiu-jitsu, really the best place I've ever been, without a doubt, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about him, and when you watch the videos, I mean, his timing, when you watch his guard passing and just the way he moves, it's ridiculous. Ridiculous. Like, I've never gotten the chance to grapple with him. Hopefully one day I make the trip out to California and I get the chance, but I've seen him just, he makes babies of men. It seems like he's that good. He does a lot of drills, and his online program, yeah, he's definitely a really good coach, so you're in good hands out there. Do you see improvements in your game?
Yeah, I think so. But, like anything, it takes a long time, and I think for me the biggest issue is, when you train a long time, a lot of the times you go to certain places and you think, oh man, I've developed a lot of bad habits. I wish I'd come and had the proper coach in the beginning. For me, particularly in England, I was almost training myself off the internet, off YouTube, trying to find out, a few guys to train with, do different things, and it's difficult to then go back and say, change the brain's way of doing something,
Yeah, and it's like retraining you when you've already been trained, and even how long have you been at AOJ?
I'm going to say maybe a year and a half.
Yeah, so that's a lot of time, but at the same time, you're not just training specific jiu-jitsu because you're an MMA fighter. Like, I have this conversation all the time. I have friends that are black belts, and they're different than other black belts. That discussion, how one black belt could be so good and then another black belt just is so much better. It's because specific sport training, they're just focusing on jiu-jitsu, where I have other black belt friends that are focusing on MMA. So they do jiu-jitsu 3 times a week, where Rafa Mendes does jiu-jitsu 7 times a week, 14 times a week.
Yeah, I mean, I would say most of the guys at AOJ that train there, they probably train jiu-jitsu at least twice a day.
Yeah, and what do you get? How many times a week are you getting jiu-jitsu training in?
I try to go there 3 times a week. I don't get a chance to do as much gi as I would like, but
well, it's rough because
at least
you have to
3
strike
times a week, but
you got to do striking, wrestling, all those other aspects. So you can't just focus on the jiu-jitsu. So you're at a little bit of a disadvantage when you go against a guy at that level in jiu-jitsu right off the bat. But it's probably a great learning tool to go against someone at that level.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's
even if
jiu-jitsu to me is something that's just fun anyway. It's not as physically taxing on your body as maybe stand up or wrestling even. So I think jiu-jitsu is something that is, I could see myself doing for a long time.
Yeah,
I was fighting anyway.
Jiu-jitsu is good. Jiu-jitsu is I've been preaching jiu-jitsu since I was a little kid. I started when I was 13. I'm now 29, so I've been doing jiu-jitsu almost my whole life. I tell everyone, jiu-jitsu is the most amazing thing in the world.
Yeah.
But another question I wanted to run by you: who you picking in the upcoming Weidman-Belfort fight? It's in your weight class, the title at 185. Who you picking in that one?
I can't back against Weidman, really. I mean, I think right now Weidman's probably one of the best guys out there at any weight. I mean, his level of wrestling, grappling is... I don't think anybody gives him a problem in that area. And, you know, he showed in his last couple of fights, arguably beat Machida standing up. So...
yeah, he arguably beat Anderson on the feet, too.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, it's very hard to bet against Weidman right now. I think he's too good, and I just think, you know, Vitor is extremely dangerous, but I really can't go against Weidman in that fight.
I've heard you take a strong stance against it in the sport before, but how do you feel about Belfort after being taken off the fight for TRT before, still getting this shot? You know, he hasn't fought in over a year. He failed his last drug test, or I guess he passed his last random test, but he failed the last one that mattered, and he got pulled off the fight. So, I mean, a guy like you, I know you take a strong stance against it. How do you feel about Vitor Belfort, you know, getting this title shot?
You know, I think the thing is that there's a lot of the top 10, really, that's the fight that people want to see, and when people want to see it, it makes them money. It is, you know, the whole drug thing really to me is a bit of a joke anyway, but it is what it is. And
you think there's a problem? You know, is there still a problem in the sport?
Oh, no doubt at all in my mind. I mean, I think anybody with a brain can really work that out. I don't just think it's fighting. I think it's in any sport, really. I just think the competition's there, and people are going to do whatever they can. I mean, but I don't know. You know,
well, after that one fight, you really captivated me as far as following your career and being a fan. I had heard of you in Cage Rage and seen you fight in England, and once you did that fight with Stanislav Novitsky, whatever his name was, and you know that was a back and forth fight, great fight. You won knockout of the night. You showed a great chin. You showed heart, all that. Your post-fight speech after that fight completely won me over. I was like, man, this guy is awesome. You know, you fight on heart. You don't need TRT, and that you challenge all those guys to meet you in the octagon. So that's the guy.
Yeah, well,
people every.
I think that's what fighting should be about, really. I mean, it's not. You know, I hear. A lot of people talk about it, which, you know, I kind of agree with that aspect. Look, if you're throwing a javelin or you're doing, you know, how much weight can you lift? Go ahead, take as much drugs as you want, and let's see some superhuman. But listen, you know, we're punching each other in the brain, we're beating each other's body up. You know, the sport's dangerous enough as it is, and I wonder a lot of these guys. You know, if they go out there and they kill someone and they know what they're doing, how that's going to play on their conscience and their mindset, it's up to them. So,
yeah, that's what I always wondered with it, is how do they deal with it? Like, I watched the special on Lance Armstrong not that long ago, and he was able to look in the camera, be asked the question, and lie to everybody and say, you know, no, I'm not on anything. No, I'm not doing this. No, I'm not doing that. And it's like, what would they do? Like, if Vitor Belfort was asked, Vitor, are you on something? Is he going to answer yes? Or is he going to dance around the question, blame it on his doctors, you know, give the whole runaround game? So it's definitely a sticky situation. I mean, I don't think the sport's ever going to get rid of it, but I admire and applaud guys like you who speak out against it, who, you know, get in there and fight and do it the right way. More or less.
Yeah, you know, I spoke out against it for a while, but I think after a while, fans just kind of, you know, people just kind of like, you know, they get the point, and you've got to be careful to not keep speaking against it all the time, and then everybody just thinks, listen, just shut up. So, you know, for me, it's like, all right, I think my opinion and is pretty well known, and that's that. You know, it's something now that
it hasn't
really
fallen on deaf ears. It definitely hasn't fallen on deaf ears. You know, you're definitely getting your message out there. Yeah. So, what else is going on for this fight? Where is this fight taking place, you versus Rafael Natal? Is it Vegas?
Yeah, it's Vegas on the Anderson Nick Diaz. It's 183, I think.
Yeah, so what do you got? Like, what do you drive out there the week before the fight?
Well, I'll fly there on the Tuesday. It's only a 15-minute flight from where I am, so it's pretty easy flight, and then get there on the Tuesday and do a bunch of the media stuff for the UFC, and then make weight and fight on the Saturday.
I'm very excited for this upcoming fight. I tune in every time you fight, so I'll definitely be tuning in for this one. It. I'll be letting everybody know. Another question I wanted to ask, coming over from the UK, you ever cross paths with Lee Murray?
You know, when I started fighting at Cage Rage, Lee Murray had kind of, he was past Cage Rage at that point. He'd been in the UFC, and he was starting to get into a few problems. So, not essentially come across him personally, but a lot of what I would say associates. You know, I fought Mark Epstein, who's, you know, was one of Lee Murray's best friends, really, and, you know, someone that was, you know, linked with him a bunch of times. So.
I just figured I'd ask, coming from the UK, I know like a lot of the Ireland guys, a lot of the UK guys, a lot of the Australia guys, when you guys come over and fight in an American promotion, you guys usually are a little tight-knit, you know?
Yeah.
But just a question I figured I'd ask, but definitely a big fan of what he could have been, you know, more or less. I like.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, he was a dangerous fighter. I'm sure there'll be a movie about his life story not too far in the future.
They're trying. What do you think of CM Punk? Do you think he deserves to be in the UFC?
Know, it's just, the thing for me is that, you know, it's already kind of come out and said that, you know, he's going to have to fight someone that's only had 1 or 2 fights. He can't, you know, the commission wouldn't allow him to fight a lot of, you know, if he fights at middleweight or 170, they're not going to allow, which I find kind of strange. What is it going to be, a UFC card with just a random fight put in there with the guys with a couple of fights? You know, I find it a little strange in that, look, if he's going to come into any division, that's fine, but he needs to fight anyone in that division, you know. I don't think there's anybody else in the UFC that would say, I'm happy to fight this guy, but not that guy.
Yeah,
you know,
it's almost
matchmaking, everybody else would laugh in your face. So.
It's almost like they're going to make their own league, individual CM Punk league with just guys that can fight CM Punk. You know, inexperienced guys that'll fight CM Punk. I've actually heard that he's good. I've actually heard that he has pretty good jiu-jitsu, and he comes from a striking background, and that he's underselling his striking background. So it remains to be seen.
Yeah, I mean, I could believe that, but, you know, one thing for me is I've known plenty of guys that, you know, they're Olympians, they're world-class in different things, but it takes a long time to get adjusted to a fight. You know, you need a couple of fights, and, okay, yes, he's been in the big arenas and on the mic, but, you know, it's different to actually competition fighting. So,
completely different. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited really to see it.
Yeah, I mean, everybody gives the example of Brock Lesnar, but, you know, Brock Lesnar had already had 2 or 3 fights outside the UFC.
And a national championship.
And I still think it took him a while to adjust. You know, he didn't come in and win his first fight. So.
Yeah, and I think the national championship, the wrestling credentials that he had, really allowed him to change the fight. You know, a guy couldn't just strike with him and knock him out because he had a big takedown. He had threat of a big double leg. Yeah. Whereas CM Punk might just get teed off on. If he has jiu-jitsu, I don't know if his butt scoot's going to work in an MMA fight. So we'll see. I just wanted to get your take on that, and we'll hopefully get you back on after the 31st. We want to thank you again for joining us. Anybody you want to give a shout-out to or thank? Any sponsors or anything?
No, I'm good.
All right. Good. Thank you very much, Tom Kong Watson. He's fighting Rafael Natal on 31st. UFC 183, I believe. Nick Diaz, Anderson Silva, the main event. So thank you again, Tom Watson, for joining us, and we'll have you soon. We'll have you back on soon, right after the fight, all right?
All right, no worries.
All right, thanks a lot, Tom.
All right, see ya.
Take it easy. So we had a great interview there with Tom Watson. In a moment, we're going to move on to our next guest. We were going to have Jessica Evil Eye, but it looks like we'll be moving her to next week's episode. So next up, we're going to jump into Chris Wade, who is out of Long Island MMA. He's an up-and-comer. He's 1-0 in the UFC. He's a former Ring of Combat champion. So we'll be back in a moment with Chris Wade. This next interview is going to be brought to you guys by the New York Fight Exchange. You guys can check them out at nyfemma.com or find them on Facebook just by typing in the New York Fight Exchange or NYFE MMA Fights. They have their 5th event, When Hell Freezes Over, coming up on January 23rd. So New York's premier MMA organization is back, January 23rd. Check out the New York Fight Exchange. And our next guest here on the MMA Pro Show, we're going to be joined by Chris Wade. Chris, do we have you?
Yes.
All right, Chris Wade out of Long Island MMA. For those of you who don't know him, you can check him out. Go Google him. Chris Wade, he's fighting... When's your next fight? January 18th, right?
Yes, Sunday, January 18th in Boston.
He's fighting on the Boston UFC card, headlined by Conor McGregor, Dennis Seaver. Who you fighting that night?
I'm going to be fighting Zhang Lipeng from China, actually.
The guy who won TUF China.
Yes.
All right, so that's a pretty big fight for you. You won your last fight. How many seconds was that last one you choked that guy out?
I think that it was a minute and 20 seconds or so.
Pretty impressive debut. What are you going to do to top it in this one?
Well, I mean, that's going to be a tough one to top timing-wise, but hopefully some of the things that we've been working on since the last fight, with the striking game, with the transitional game from striking into the ground game, is going to show. Maybe putting some of those things together and we can get a little bit of a different type of finish, but I can't predict a time frame like that again, so we'll see, but I'm feeling good about it.
How's training going for this fight?
Training's been great for this fight, knock on wood, been healthy as can be, feeling really strong, training over at Long Island MMA, over with Rob Laviento at LI Strength. He's had Dennis and I going for a while together now in camp, and the power is going up through the roof. I feel like I get stronger each week that I go in with him. And the striking game and the jiu-jitsu is also, we've been putting a ton of time in, so hopefully those things shine through. Camp has been great in that regard. We've been learning a lot. We've been boxing a lot. We've just been really mixing it up, trying to develop to fully round everything out and become more of a complete fighter.
Who are your coaches over there?
So over at Long Island MMA, my main coach is Greg DePasquale. He does a lot of work with me as far as my jiu-jitsu goes, which I think's been shining through for quite a while now, for a few years. And he also does a lot of work with me as far as cage work goes, grappling in there tight, plum work goes as far as knees, elbows, unorthodox strikes, conditioning, setting up my schedule. Then I have Ryan LaFleur, who is one of my best teammates, as well as kind of that big brother type of influence on me that I being the oldest of my brothers, I don't really have that kind of in my life, and he's a fighter as well, so he kind of really mentors me. I get a big amount of what I do is influenced from advice from Ryan, and he works with me. He takes time to work with Ryan Patridge and I. We drill quite a bit. We work on things that he feels that will help us both. So those two guys, as well as, like I said, Rob Laviento, my strength coach over there, they've been extremely instrumental.
You sound like you're in good hands.
Yeah, I forgot, actually, Coach Herman over there as well. Coach Herman Williams, the boxing coach. We've been putting in a few days a week with him as well, and I think the hands are going to show come Sunday. I think that really we took some strides there, whereas in the past, a little bit of reluctance to get in there, sit in the pocket, and throw, and now just working with him, the comfort is really picking up there as well, so.
Yeah, they're definitely doing big things right now, Long Island MMA. I see them all over the events on the East Coast cleaning up, and they're producing a lot of good guys. You said Dennis, that's Dennis Bermudez, right?
Yeah, the young gym has been around for a few years, so it's really starting to come to a head now. LaFleur, Dennis, and myself now being the three that are in the UFC, and now we have this big wave of amateur fighters coming up as well that are finally starting to turn pro and really turn heads on the regional circuit professionally around here in Jersey and Connecticut and anywhere really in the Northeast where we can get these guys fights. PA, Dennis's work, his body of work speaks for itself, and being another one of my main training partners, I mean, he's on the cusp of beating any of those guys in the top 5, top 10 any given night, so I mean, he's an absolute stud.
Oh, all the guys that you named over there. You got Ryan LaFleur, who's a perennial title contender, Dennis Bermudez, who's a perennial title contender, and then now you jump on the scene. And I know you guys also have Marcos Galval, who's about to fight Joe Warren for the Bellator title. So you guys have a pretty good pro crop of fighters over there. A nice little variety in weight classes, as well as skill level, promotion. So you guys got a good thing going on over there at Long Island MMA.
Yeah, I mean, the pro practices are getting crazier and crazier by the week. Every time I go in there, we got another couple of guys looking to come down just to roll with us. It's really getting sharper and sharper. It's such a war in there. You know, every time we go, Laurel's got a big fight coming up. I got a big fight coming up. You know, Dennis and Ryan, I'm sure, will be slated soon. It's just growing and growing. Like I said, we're a young gym, so although that notoriety hasn't quite hit us yet, like some of these other gyms that you hear about on each and every UFC card, like the Team Alpha Male and whatnot. But, you know, I'm very, very confident that within a few years you're going to be hearing quite a bit from the commentators and the people in and around the UFC, the media, as far as East Coast, especially Northeast gyms go, about Long Island MMA. So very excited about that.
Oh, definitely. Like I said, I'm familiar with not just the fighters. I'm familiar with Greg DePasquale as well, and he's a very unheralded coach. He's similar to a Greg Jackson, and in a couple of years, I'm sure when they speak Greg Jackson, they'll be speaking Greg DePasquale as well. So I know you got a good head coach over there. Sound like you got great training partners. So I'm excited to see you back in the cage against this TUF China winner. Have you watched any fights on him?
Yeah, Greg, my striking coach Joe Panarello at Studio 42 Kickboxing, and Ryan as well. We've all had taken time where we've watched his last two fights, especially the UFC fights. We think that those are kind of the most telling as to what he's going to look to go to and utilize. So we've had the opportunity to watch him a little bit there. We don't get too crazy over there as a gym as a whole as far as trying to pick people apart, because as you know, you've been watching the game a long time also. These guys, they tend to evolve a little bit as well. They're trying to watch you. They're trying to make adjustments. So if you get too carried away as far as trying to hone in on what they do, then tends to be where you don't really utilize your strengths, kind of fighting the other guy's fight. So we like to try to break them down and find out what the meat and potatoes of the game are that they go to consistently, especially as they fatigue. And once we hone in on that, then we try to address it and be ready for it fight night.
How's your cardio for this fight? I know a lot of the guys from Long Island MMA, that's what they seem like they have in the back pocket that really separates them from the other guys, is they all have a endless gas tank, it seems.
Yeah, cardio feels great. You know, I've been doing a lot of sparring work. They've been taking me over to Serra-Longo to spar with Ally Quinta quite a bit, and you know, he's obviously killing it as well.
He's got a big fight coming up too.
Biggest stage. Yeah, he's going to be fighting Luazon coming up on the 31st in Vegas. So, you know, going with him and going with Dennis consistently. The mindset is, as far as the conditioning goes, is, you know, between LaFleur and Dennis and Iaquinta, and then you have Andre Harrison and Gregor Gillespie and all these guys that I'm cross-training with on the island because of our proximity. You know, you working hard and going in there and getting after it with these guys, the idea is that they're not going to be able to replicate what these guys are providing as far as hard training sessions goes. They just simply can't match it, I don't think, at least personally, especially where this guy is at training. No offense to his camp, I'm sure they work hard, but just as far as the depth and the quality of talent goes, I really, really think that every time I go in there, I'm confident that the things that I went through during camp, this guy's not going to be able to replicate. So,
yeah, you sound very confident.
Cardio confidence is a big thing. You know, if a guy feels like he didn't work hard, or if he feels like, you know, in the back of his mind he's unsure if he can go the whole way, then you're going to start to run into problems. And with me, we make sure that we're sparring a few times a week, where I'm not getting out of the cage until we get all of our rounds in that we, you know, may be forced to do in the cage, which is going to be 15 minutes, and then we supplement with Rob. He's got me doing sprints either outside or indoor, depending on the weather. And between those two things and the hard pro practices that we go through, more than confident that I can push and push and push. And we try to fold guys up, we try to fold them up late in rounds. We try to make them break their will, and, capitalize on that.
That sounds like the right game plan. That's how you win fights. You got to be able to outcondition guys, because at that level, everybody's good. So it's going to come down to who can be good for the longest amount of time. Who can keep putting out that output for the longest amount of time. So it comes down to cardio. You could look at the fight last night. Granted, it was probably Jon Jones's striking, his body shots, and his pace, but Daniel Cormier's cardio completely failed him.
Yeah, there was so much hype going into that fight. I personally, I'm on the record all over the place as saying Jones was going to win that fight. I had no doubt in my mind, but Jon is always ready to. He had been to war before, He's been to war in high school when he was a wrestler. He's an accomplished wrestler. Not that Daniel isn't, but because he is as well. But he's been to war against Gustafsson in these 5-round title fights. He's been pushed constantly, so he knows what it's like to dig deep in those championship rounds. And you could just tell that Cormier had been fighting a lot of 3-rounders, and he was not really quite ready for those last 10 minutes. And I don't know if you've ever been in the cage sparring fives, but when you spar fives, sparring fives is like nothing else in this world.
Nothing else in this world. People have no idea.
It really isn't. I'm sitting here right now. I got the football game on in the background, kind of, and these guys are amazing athletes. I take nothing from them. They perform at the highest of levels. The speed of the game is very, very intense, but
they could
put any of them in for 5 minutes sparring, and maybe a couple of them last that first round. But you start checking in on them in the third round, and it's a nightmare. You know what I mean? If you're not ready, it's an absolute nightmare. There's nothing worse than having no energy left, being locked in a cage with another human being who's trying to take you out.
Oh, so, especially a guy like a Ryan LaFleur or a Dennis Bermudez or a Nick Diaz, a guy like that with endless cardio.
If you're not ready to go in there with them when they close that cage door when we're practicing, then it's going to be a long session for you. You're going to be doing some reflecting in the car on the way home. So obviously we pride ourselves in that. We never want to be with that guy that looks gassed. I watched last night Lombard putting a lot of pressure on
Berkman.
What's his name? Yeah, Berkman. And, no offense to him, but he looked like a guy that, that was kind of taken off the street, that, somebody was trying to attack, that he was trying to get him off of him. He was walking away. His hands were on his hips a lot of the times. Some of that's from him trying to throw too much power and put the guy away, but some of it's just not really properly getting ready. This is one of those sports, I spoke a little bit about the football before. These guys, they come in, they run 2 or 3 hard plays, and then they take a nice jog over to the sideline. They get some Gatorade. Their coach, fans them down and gives them a nice little break, and then they come back in when they're good and ready. And in fighting, that's just not the case. You can't be doing that. But
I always say,
there's no going to sit down.
Every other professional sport, the athlete is pampered compared to fighting. There's no pampering in fighting. There's no... You get yelled at when your corner puts water in your mouthpiece after your mouthpiece was on the floor. You know what I mean? There's no pampering in fighting. It's pretty brutal. It's definitely one of the most brutal sports. But
and I think the wrestling really helps to prepare you for that.
That's where I was going to go next. You came up wrestling, right? You crossed paths a little bit with Jon Jones coming up, right?
Yeah, Jon and I, same age, graduated the same year. Even Arthur, his brother for that matter, who plays football. We both won state titles the same year, and we've been on multiple New York State teams together that went out and competed against the rest of the country. So, yeah, Jon and I spent some time together wrestling as teammates, Fargo, Oklahoma national dual teams, just coming across him at every, big-time New York State tournament that there was. He was always a force, so everybody kind of knows everybody within that community once you get to a certain level. So definitely, I've always been a big fan of Jon since he's broke in, and I first realized he was fighting. Kind of, one of those people that you see where you can feel like, hey, this guy's real. Like this is real. Like this guy did this. I can try this. I can give this a go. I like sometimes when you're watching as a fan, you don't have a relationship with any of these people. They seem as if like they're not real. Things seem very far off and seems very hard to get there. And then when you start to meet and some of the people, it becomes a little bit more of a reality for you, a little easier to grasp.
Oh, yeah. So, like Jon Jones and you wrestling years ago and now seeing what Jon Jones did, that could almost put it in your head and make it feasible that Anthony Pettis is a man. Donald Cerrone, they're all just guys. You can.
Yeah, they're all just men. They're great at what they do. They have a lot of talent. They have a lot of ability, a lot of heart. But they're just men in the end. That's exactly where I'm going with that. It puts it into perspective for you, lets you know that these things are a reality. And they're not superheroes that you just see on the television and
we saw that
media
with Anderson.
hype around it.
We saw that with Anderson Silva. If he was a superhero, his leg wouldn't have broken. But he's not.
The media does such a good job of hyping everything up, so sometimes it can seem as if it's a lot more than it really is. You have to just keep it all in perspective, work hard, and know that the people that you train with prepare you to go with any of these guys at the top level.
So coming up wrestling definitely prepared you for a career in MMA.
Without a doubt. Without wrestling, I'm not on the phone with you right now. I'm not in the UFC. I'm probably just working from 9 to 5. Wrestling, means the world to me. Without it, I certainly would not be here. No doubt about it.
And you started as a kid. You've trained kids. You still teach wrestling?
Yeah, I'm still very, very involved in wrestling. With being where I am in my fighting career, I'm unable to be a coach at high school level right now or at a lower level consistently. I can't commit that type of time with both various things going on in my life. But in the past few years, I'm always involved in a high school program. I'm still constantly working with kids here and there, on a either semi-private or like a one-on-one basis, trying to help them hone their skills there, hone their technique, work on cardio, work on conditioning, work on foot speed, footwork, anything and everything in and around the sport, nutrition, weight management, stuff like that.
Growing up wrestling, you were definitely a rough kid. Growing up on Long Island, I grew up on Long Island. I know how kids are. You get into a lot of street fights growing up?
Yeah, you know what? To be honest with you, I'd like to say that I didn't, but I really kind of did. It seems like not really the type of community where you would always be forced into fights and whatnot, but something about growing up here, maybe it's like the proximity to everybody else and the amount of people that are on the island.
Yeah, statistics. But, the amount of people.
Yeah, I think it's just like the numbers game and stuff like that. There was always, might have had to do some with success in sporting and in athletics where people, other people, your peer group, may be a little jealous or a little upset for one reason or another about what you're doing and kind of want to take a shot at you, test themselves, see how tough they are. But, it seems like for a little while there, but especially towards high school and into early college, I can't even gather a number. It's rather high.
Do you look at any of that? Do you look at any of that experience as part of what led you here? Like, did you enjoy fighting, right? Do you enjoy it? Do you look at it as a sport? Like, what goes through what goes through your head before you're about to fight? What are you thinking about?
I'm an evolved fighter, I think, now at this point, where the mindset is a lot different than when you first start going in there, but there's no doubt about it. You can see it, man. You watch a lot of fighting. There's those guys that are in there that are athletes, but you're like asking yourself, are they fighters though? Like,
yes.
Are they really fighters? Like, when it comes down to it, when they get punched in the mouth, like, how do they respond? When they get kicked or they get taken down or elbowed or kneed and something doesn't go their way, what's the response? I know so many wrestlers that are tough as nails, but you look around, stuff starts hitting the fan somewhere, and it's time to scrap for one reason or another. And these guys are the first ones that are gone. They're nowhere to be found after there's a story. I was going to help this or do that, take care. I got this girl out of there or something. They just didn't. They ran away from that,
the fight or flight mentality. People either fight or people fly.
My brothers and I don't know, my friends and I, there's a lot of loyalty and a lot of camaraderie and stuff like that. So if anyone was ever in trouble, like, there was never that flight mechanism for most of us. We always got in there with each other, whether the numbers were stacked in our favor or not. We didn't run anywhere. We were going to be there no matter what went down, so there's no question that, I talked to Ryan about this a lot, actually, at the gym, because, he had his fair share of those types of run-ins, too. And, although you're not necessarily proud of those types of things, especially, now being a pro fighter, none of that would ever cross my mind. That's the furthest thing from anything I would ever try to do. You want to get far away from that junk as possible, but when you're a little younger, you're not in this game, it really, those are like fights, kind of, to tell the truth.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. It's the nerves. It's the same nerves as before you're about to get into the octagon or the ring. It's similar. It's similar.
Very similar. Very similar,
and I always tell people, because I know a lot of people that fight, and I've always talked to people, it happens so fast. Like, you're training hundreds of minutes, thousands of minutes. That 15 minutes of that fight is going to go by like that, and you're going to go, what the fuck? What happened? Did I get that takedown? Did I win that round? Like, what happened? You don't even remember. It's hard to remember the fight when you're in there. Like,
it's a blink of an eye. It really is.
It all happens so quick.
We speak constantly about it at the gym. My coach, Joe, will be telling me, I can't believe how quick it's already. This morning, we're in there training. I was doing some sprint work and some drilling with him, and he said, I can't believe we're already 2 weeks out. I remember you telling me, we were 10 weeks out. And I said to him, Joe, there's going to be a blink of an eye, and we're going to be 2 weeks out. You're going to be saying, I can't believe how fast that went. It's just,
and that's what we are now. We're 2 weeks out, right? So the
2 weeks on the button.
I mean, I'll tell you, before we wrap up, I'll finish up with a funny story. I actually went to one of the Ring of Combats. You mentioned your brother earlier. I went to one of the Ring of Combats, and I happened to get my seat, and I sat with the Wades. I was sitting with the Wade family as you fought Frankie Perez, and I've never seen anything like that. It was like, I could only imagine how, like, a game of Monopoly or watching football at home. It was a rowdy crowd. You had your dad, your mom, your brother. Everyone was just so invested in the fight, and just watching them all just go through the fight as you went through the fight. They went through the fight with you. You know what I mean? It was an awesome thing to see. It really was. And just
at one point, I had a takedown on Frankie, and I had just hurt him with like a side kick or something. He was hurt and he was backing away, and I wasn't sure if he was just kind of playing possum or what the deal was toward the end. I really kind of had thought that I had the fight under wraps, so I didn't want to take any crazy chances and start, trying to haul off, because I've seen guys in the past that play possum and get hit and get dropped and stuff. I knew he felt like he needed to finish, so I stalked him down kind of a little more slowly, and I looked beyond him. He's against the cage. Right behind him is my brother screaming, he's hurt, put him away, finish him now. It's just the intensity. Obviously you can't get that close now, but with those lower level fights, you could get right up there, and they want to get in there for you. It's worse for your family than it is for you.
Yeah, like that's what I was going to
say. They have no control, so the emotions run very high.
They were in there with you, watching all them. They were in there with you completely. They were going through the motions with you, feeling every punch, delivering every kick. So it was a great thing to watch, and it's an awesome thing that you have your family supporting you like that. So just to see it, a lot of times it's a brutal sport. So for your mom to come out to your fight, that's a big thing. I know a lot of guys that their moms don't approve, so you definitely have a support system. It sounds like you have a great team over there at Long Island MMA, And I'm really looking forward to your next fight. Hopefully we'll get you back on after you beat this guy.
All right, Stan. Thank you so much. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Chris. And again, everybody check him out. January 18th, he's fighting the TUF China winner, Chris Wade. Check him out on, what's your Twitter name, Chris?
Yeah, you can follow me at CWadeMMA on either Instagram or Twitter. Same handle. So.
Anybody else you want to thank or any shout-outs you want to give?
Just, my coaches, my training partners. There's so many people that have been so intricate in my success. We're taking another 10 minutes to go through it all. They know who they are. I've mentioned a few of them here during our interview. So
we'll get you on in a couple weeks after you knock out this Japanese dude or Chinese dude, and you can tell us all about those guys, all right?
All right, Stan. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us, Chris. We'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Later. Bye. And with that, we're going to wrap up the first episode of the MMA Pro Show. We got to thank Tom Watson for coming on. He's fighting either on pay-per-view or on Fox Sports on January 31st, UFC card, UFC 183. Make sure you check out Chris Wade. We got to thank him again for joining us. He's fighting January 18th in the UFC Boston card. And we got to thank our sponsors for helping making this show happen. The New York Fight Exchange, Baroni Recycling, Stanley Builders Home Improvements. We really got to thank The Real Radio Show. We really got to thank the people at The Rock Underground, Brandon and Ken, for helping make this show happen. And next week, we're hopefully going to link up with Jessica I, as well as we have some surprise guests. And rest in peace to Stuart Scott. My condolences go out to his family and anyone that he knew. He was a great journalist. Also want to shout out the NYPD, keeping the streets safe. And this is the MMA Pro Show signing off. We'll see you guys next week, and you stay classy. The following interview is going to be brought to you guys by Baroni Recycling. They specialize in scrap metal. You can check them out or contact them at baronirecycling.com. If you guys are in the New York area, they're the go-to guys in the industry. Once again, Baroni Recycling at baronirecycling.com. This episode of the MMA Pro Show is brought to you by Baroni Recycling. You can check them out or contact them at baronirecycling.com. If you guys are in the New York area, they are the go-to guys in the industry for scrap metal. Again, baronirecycling.com.